这些人要么丢失了，要么找不着了，要么被抓了，要么进在监狱里，要么自杀了。而且绝大多数人都有一个共同的死法，叫堕落死。因为那里有一个独裁的政党，叫共产党。海航是代表共产党在西方的一个间谍平台、洗钱平台和对西方政治进行蓝金黄的渗透平台。
1年多已经卖了3500多亿，是全世界数第1号。
Over 2 events, one that happened in London earlier in the spring, and then one that happened in Turkey several weeks ago. The one in the spring was the poisoning of Russian dissidents or Russian citizens in London. And the one the last couple of weeks was looks like the killing of a Washington Post columnist, Khashoggi, in Turkey. And both these situations, as tragic as they were, created an international media firestorm. Well, what we're here today, and Miles Guo is going to walk you through, is something that's quite frankly stunning. Literally hundreds, if not thousands, of the best and the brightest of the Chinese people are either missing, have been imprisoned, have committed suicide, have died under mysterious circumstances, or have had their assets taken from them and are impoverished. And the world's media today has not connected the dots, or there's literally been no outrage. Now, this is not 1 or 2 isolated cases, and these are not people who are not insignificant in media, in their corporate life, in the financial life, in government, in the military. It's across the board, and it's men and it's women. It is absolutely stunning that this could go on in a culture, a global culture that's connected by media, and there's literally crickets. Well, that ends today. And it ends because one man's prepared to stand up and say, he's not prepared to tolerate this, and he will use every asset at his disposal to bring truth to this, to make sure the Chinese people do not come under any more assault as they're already coming from the Chinese Communist Party and the senior leadership of the CCP. Today is about recklessness and accountability. As many people in the world, and particularly in the world's financial centers, are starting to understand, the Chinese Communist Party and the senior leadership of the CCP have acted financially recklessly over the last 10, 15, or 20 years. And that printing of currency and increasing of debt and everything that that's causing and will cause in the future, I believe in a coming financial crisis, can be seen in the example that Miles Guo is going to walk through today. We have one of the, if not the largest financial company in the world, that has essentially been created from a very small company, and from 2014 to 2018 became, I think, arguably the largest financial company in the world, with the aid and support of major Western financial institutions and major financial players in the West. And the question has to be, how reckless was this? Who benefited from this? Who owns this? Who took these assets from the Chinese people? Who profited off this? Who looked the other way?
Good afternoon. Welcome to the legal battle of the century. And today is October 7th, 2022. It's a Friday, so it's a good news. And I'm Rachel today, and today it's just going to be me. Nicole is busy at work. So we have KK, who is our OBS supporter, is with me. So basically in the live stream room, just me and KK. And thank you again for tuning in our program. And this is actually episode 18th of this series. So anyway, today we have a lot to talk because I really liked Bannon's speech on the November 20th, 2018, that day in Pier Hotel in New York City. He and Miles School declared a war with the CCP, the totalitarian, evil, brutal regime. So we will continue our topic on the death of Wang Jian, which I will ask KK to turn to the slide number 2. And just kind of reminding everybody, we have spending probably 7 episodes, or even 6, maybe 7. Don't quote me on the number. So Wang Qishan and HNA. So HNA is a huge financial conglomerate that was established back in Hainan province in China. And then it grew into a humongous enterprise, international organization. Basically, in 2018, it was ranked as the 170th largest company among the Fortune Global 500 list. So you can imagine it. And in the previous show, I actually mentioned a number that was cited from a news reporter from the United States. I think it was a research group. They mentioned about HNA has 400 sub-entities. So HNA Group was a parent company for 400 subsidiaries, but that number wasn't accurate. Actually, later on, I noticed that Miles School, in one of his live streaming on YouTube, he mentioned that HNA actually have 1,100 companies established in U.S., just in U.S. alone, and across the global, it has more than 2,000 companies, entities. So the size of HNA is beyond anybody's imagination. So anyway, back to the topic. So we have spent a lot of time talking about Wang Qishan's rise and HNA's rise, and the ownership of HNA, which we explored the ultimate beneficiaries of HNA, which are the illegitimate sons of those oligarchs and kleptocrats like Wang Qishan. And the way they codified they hide their illegitimate sums and wealth out of the public, and under one top secrets that the CCP held is called architecture art project. So we spend a lot of time explaining what it is and what's the harm to the world. So if you want to look back to the previous episode, please feel free to do so. And today we're going to continue the topic that we have been on in the last 3 episodes, is about White Glove's fate, the death of Wang Jian. Wang Jian is one of the white gloves, which in the last 2 shows we have showed you a number of several white gloves, but there is a vast amount of them out there still. But anyway, let's back to the key points that we're going to discuss today. If we turn to the slide number 3, that's the question that we're going to donate some time on. And as Bannon mentioned in the intro video that we played, these people are not insignificant. You know, the size of HNA, and he is one of the most richest guy in China as the chairman of HNA. And also, he is a green card holder of the United States. His wife and son are living in Seattle, and his burial site is in Seattle as well. So, and all his company and assets holding by HNA is all over the world, mainly in Europe and US. So these are not insignificant events of the death of Wang Jian, especially when the death was clouded with so many suspicious points and contradictory testimonies from witnesses. So we're gonna before we talk to the detail, because Nicole is not here today, so we wanted to leave the details to the next show, which is next Monday. So we will go through some testimonies line by line, and we were introducing who are the witnesses at the scene, on that day, on the July 3rd, 2018, the day that Wang Jian died. So we will walk you through by details in next show. But today we're going to answer this question: why Wang Jian had to die. Okay, so let's turn to the slide 4. Slide 4, there's a lot of words on the slide 4 for the next several slides, because that's the only way that I can explain this to you. So this information was, as I mentioned, the press conference that held by Mr. Bannon and Mr. Guo, Miles Guo, on November 20th, 2018, when they declared the war on the CCP evil regime at the Pier Hotel. I think that's Mr. Bannon's favorite hotel. And in New York City. And this is directly quote. I just translated it in English because it was said by Miles in Chinese. So he said, "We have seen the whole process of HNA event unfolding, from state-owned to private, from private to Guanjun and Liu Chenjie, and from Guanjun, Liu Chenjie to New York Cihang Charity and US dollars. Throughout this process, Wang Jian was the only and most critical insider." Okay, so this paragraph basically outlined the last 7 episodes that we have been doing. So basically explained how the state-owned enterprises in China become a privatized enterprise, and how they privatized during the privatization period of time. These are private assets that's supposed to be shared, collectively owned by the 1.4 Chinese billion people, but went to the personal pocket of those kleptocrats and the family. And those Guanjun and Liu Chenjie are the illegitimate hidden sons and daughters of those kleptocrats. So this is happening, and it is still happening in China today. So, and how those Chinese yuan, how those Chinese assets become US dollars? How did they launder the money, and why wash those illegal gained money, which is money stolen from the people, the deplorables, and become their personal assets? And this is their magic wand waved in the last decades, 2-3 decades, with help of the Western, financial tycoons or powerful political figures. So anyway, this is happening, and we'll just live the results of those things nowadays. And then in the green part, it says, he knows too much about Wang Qishan and the past financial and various relationships between these kleptocrats' family and HNA. Okay, so this is the reason that he has to die. Okay, he knows too much about the dirty secrets that Wang Qishan and his family has been hidden in terms of how they basically weaved their magic wands, turning everything into their own personal pocket and stay away from jail, basically. And the next slide. That's a second reason. Okay, so we have a first reason. That's a second reason. So Miles continued. He said, "I have been with officials of the Chinese Communist Party, the Ministry of Security, the Ministry of Intelligence, and military senior officials, including Wang Qishan himself. And they told me clearly that HNA is CCP's intelligence platform and strategic platform for overseas development. It is a CCP's internal company, a security department company. So Wang Jian knows too many state secrets. Therefore, he has to die." So this is the second reason. So you will ask why Miles, so closely associated with those people who are, in those Ministry of Security. As we probably mentioned in our previous show, Miles Guo is the owner of the Panguo Hotel, which is the only 7-star hotel in China, and it's right across the Olympic site where the swimming stadium is, like the cubic stadium where the swimming stadium is, and the opening ceremony, the bird nest stadium is just right across the Panguo Hotel, the luxury hotel he owns, and he has basically meeting, the elites all over the world from the globe. He, because his personality and his charismatics, people love him. If you met Miles, you will know that you will fall in love with him. Because many of the fellow fighters from the whistleblower, they can testify for that. And the reason I think Miles have such a attractive, regardless your agenda, your age, and your nationalities, your language spoken, I think it's ability for him to stay stay non-judgmental. Like when you talk to him, you will feel like he is the only person that you will feel like he's not judging you, and he's encouraging you to really reach your potential, and he's that sort of person. I think whether you are whether you're police or secret police or field officers, you will like Miles, because he is a man of his words and he respects people. So I think ultimately that's why people fall for Miles, and that's because why he has so many friends across the all stripes of lives basically. Anyway, so, and also he's very close friends with previous deputy of Ministry of Public Security Ma Jian, who was, in our previous show we showed you the confession tape that made by Ma Jian, which is the CCP's retaliation to Miles's whistleblowing activities in 2017, and that the whole covert influence campaign that CCP carried out in overseas against Miles Guo was clearly and very well documented by the U.S.-China Security and Economic Review Commission. Yes, in their 2017 Congress report, they basically very well documented regarding that covert influence campaign against Miles. So I'm not going to repeat that again. You can watch our previous episodes to catch that up if you have not heard of that. So this is the second reason. And the key really barriers here, because HNA is an intelligence platform. So basically, it's a state-sponsored platform. Okay, so not just the Wang Qishan, and it must have somebody else is also condone to that, allow for that to develop, or close their eyes to allow that to happen, to carry out what they call the CCP's 100 years marathon. By 2049, CCP wants to become the #1 superpower in the world. To do that, they have to take down the United States, because the United States has been the hegemony for quite a while. So that's why the CCP, because they are living in two different worlds, the ideology is completely different. So that is why they are using those commercial enterprises as intelligence platform to collect intelligence, to spread their networks of special agents. In the previous show, we have already exposed the unrestricted warfare concept, and this is kind of a tool how the CCPs deploy their assets and how they carry out this unrestricted warfare. Basically, General Spalding, Robert Spalding's book, how the CCP took over the world when American elite slept. I think that's the book that he mentioned about 6 fronts of the unrestricted warfare, and this is exactly the same thing that he has been talking about, is how the CCP use a covert way of attacking America. So anyway, Wang Jian has to die, because later on in the next show we will show you Wang Jian is actually works for the CCP, and he has a lot of passports. He has different passports and different valid dates, and this was whistleblowed by Miles Guo in one of his live streaming. He basically showed us the different passports that Wang Jian had, and maybe in next show we will show you, and you will know he's definitely not a deplorables, not a common people, and only spies or special agents with special tasks would have so many different passports, but Wang Jian is one of those people. Anyway, that's the second reason that he has to die. So let's take a look at the third reason why Wang Jian had to die. So the third is the next slide number 6. Miles continues. So according to the written Chinese law, every merger Wang Jian did in the United States would be considered money laundering. I believe everyone here knows that he knows too much, and the money cannot be returned, and the wealth of the country and the money laundering need to be borne by one person. So Wang Jian must die. Okay, so this is a third reason why he had to die. Basically, Wang Jian helped the kleptocrats Wang Qishan and the other related parties stole the wealth from the local banks, because we mentioned about Wang Qishan's background is in banking and financial industry. He's in charge of commercial activities and financial banking industries when he first became the premier of the PRC. So anyway, so he has Wang Qishan has his network, prepared for him, allow him to do this kind of work later on. Because one way of stealing is really easy. Is basically the state guaranteed a loan. Because if you're a state enterprise, you can get unlimited amount of loan from all those banks, right? And all those banks, pretty much the China's banks is pretty much 99% controlled by the CCP because there's no foreign banks. Really, 1% is foreign banks. With that, the foreigners probably have very, very limited influence. Anyway, so it's pretty much so when you're state-owned, you can guaranteed to have loans. Regardless how you perform, it doesn't matter. Because in Chinese, the CCP-controlled banking, they're not regular business. They're not profit-driven business. They've never been in their history. Their number one goal is political, right? They want to be the number one power. So how can they be the number one power? They have a path, they have a strategy, they have multiple strategies to get there. And one of them is One Belt, One Road. A lot of you probably already heard One Belt, One Road is to expansion and offering loans to those developing country in Africa, in South America, in Southeast China. And then these loans are really unfavorable in terms of that target country, because most of them basically they're taking a loan that they would not be able to return, and with unbearable interests. So a lot of those loans did bankrupt those countries, as we heard by the international news reporting reported in the past. So I'm not going to repeat that, but the emphasis here is the money has been already stowed from the bank, and the CCP had never intended to return those money back to people. Okay, so they just take the money out to fund their business activities domestically or internationally using the nation's name. Okay, that's the only way they can transfer billions of monies out of their Chinese bank to an international bank. There's no other way. Right? If you and me transfer money, if we wanted to move not 1 million, even we wanted to move $200,000, you try your luck to see whether the bank is gonna ask you a lot of questions, because they citing, there's a banking policy called money laundering policy. So they have to check your source of funds, where you're going, what you're doing. So they wouldn't know everything. But how a person can transfer billions of money, how Chinese kleptocrats can transfer billions of money out of the bank to somewhere they want to go, well, they would have to use diplomatic, routes or other powerful routes to achieve that, or judicial routes, whatever. That is why, there's tons of corruption here involved. And in the past 5 years, Mahao School has been telling everyone how the CCP managed to do it. Okay, this is just the outcome of it, because the money is gone and the bad debts can easily be written off, and the price is borne by the everyday people. But here, they need to lie to the people. They don't want the Chinese people ever know the truth, because one day, if the Chinese people know the truth and believed it, the CCP are done. The CCP is going to be gone. So they fear of that. So they want to continue their legitimacy as perceived as a government. So they need to lie to the people. They need to deceive them. In order to deceive them, they need a scapegoat. Okay, and that scapegoat can be easily be borne by one person. That person is Wang Jian. That's why he has to die. So let's take a look at the next slides, slide number 7. Here I summarized it for you, because I think when we talk about the 3 different reasons, it does not give you a holistic picture. But here, the top main 3 reasons that Miles has mentioned in his live streaming videos, November 20th, 2018, is this. There are 3 reasons. Number 1 is personal. Okay, so that's Wang Qishan. Too many secrets. Because Wang Qishan is the second most powerful person in the CCP. In communist China, he did heinous crimes. He has done so much damage, not only to the Chinese people, not only to China, but also to the world. And we will get to that. You will see that. And his expected outcome is to hide his crime. Of course, he doesn't want people to know that what he did, and also he's embezzled, humongous amount of wealth that hidden under the names of him or his illegitimate sons and daughters. So the second purpose is the CCP unrestricted warfare strategy. So when you see the kleptocrats and the nation, because the kleptocrats always do everything in the name of the nation, because there's a lot of political allies or political opponents they have to, keep working with. But in order to lie, so the whole system is full of lie. There's really no long-term friendship, so-called. Even like in previous show, we mentioned to you how close he was with Xi, but they don't trust each other. And now, the trust relationship has already thrown out of window, because after 2018, things has changed, and she's starting realizing that Wang is not someone that he can put his life, he can count him to put his life on. So, but after 2018, the political fighting has teared off that alliance. So, but anyway, here is the CCP unrestricted warfare strategy: hide the CCP's intelligence network and destroy United States. As I mentioned, that's their ultimate goal. 2049 is their 100 years marathon that they want to become the #1 superpower in the world and taking over the world. So American has to die. Democracy has to die. Freedom. What's freedom? So this is their second strategy. So Wang Jian has to die because they don't want to expose their intelligence network, the platform they have been sowing for years, for decades. Okay, so and so work for us, and who are those, agents or seemingly independent middlemen? Remember, Christopher Wray has mentioned about seemingly independent middlemen, and these all, all the CCP's part of their intelligence network. And the last part is to deceive the Chinese people. That's the third reason. They maintain the CCP's legitimacy in China. So the bank loan, the money disappeared in the bank where basically hosts the savings, the life savings, retirement savings of the Chinese deplorables are gone, and they gone is because they went to the kleptocrats' pocket. Okay, and partially went to, purchasing the One Belt, One Road, offering loans to other country, but never intended for those countries to return. Then the CCP can basically using the financial leverage to control the other country. So the Chinese deplorables paid for everything, and the price ultimately was borne by them, but the CCP has to lie to them, so then they continue their regime and ruling of them. So Wang Jian has to die. So all three reasons, Wang Jian must die, and he did die. So this is a part of the slides number 8. I just want to mention that's the definition of the white gloves, and there's a lot of white gloves. White gloves, they basically in business. Commercial leaders, business leaders, they are very successful from the outside, but really they are just insider and servants of those kleptocrats, those oligarchs. They work for them. They're just a servant, and that therefore they are completely at disposal. Their life is completely at disposal of those demons, of those like Wang Qishan, like Xi Jinping, like many other people in the Standing Politburo members. So they really, it's a sad story. They did so much for their masters, but they themselves have to die, just because for what they have, what they have done. But you would say these are white gloves. They deserve, the ending they are. But to be honest, in CCP's evil regime, the fate of white gloves sometimes are actually similar to the fate of the CCP officials themselves. Because, in recent news, we already know that Shun Lijun, Fu Zhenhua, they all have been sentenced to the death sentence, basically, death penalty, with 2 years of 2 years of suspension, basically execution. All of them were actually high-ranking officials serving in the CCP. All of them have worked in the Wang Qishan's faction, in the Jiang faction, then Wang Qishan's faction, but they didn't end up with a better outcome than Wang Jian. Wang Jian died these two has been given death penalty, and and I don't know which one is better, which results is better than the other. I don't know, but I think they're all finished. So here I want to give you an example of how evil the CCP regime is. As Ben mentioned, these are very, very important people in the world. They are not insignificant. We already see Wang Jian is not insignificant, but in Wang Jian's case, there's another person. It's very ironic because I think it's the best example to shed a light how evil the regime is, really. It's not about evil of individual person, but this regime, this communism ideology is really killing everyone. No one is safe. And here is the best example. So I want to go to the slide number 9. I want to talk about this guy. His name is Meng Hongwei, and he is kind of intertwined with this case, with Wang Jian's death. The reason why I want to talk about him because later on when we talk about the testimonies in the next episode, you will see Meng Hongwei has managed to tampering with the evidence and also to falsify testimonies of the witnesses. And because he can, and because he was the former president of Interpol. Okay, so slide number 9. So, Meng Hongwei, prior to become the president of Interpol in 2016 November, he was the vice minister of the Ministry of Public Security, 2004 to 2018. Okay, so as you can see, he has been working in the policing, involved in setting up the law enforcement back in China for 14 years, almost 14, 15 years in his career. And of course, he's a member of the CCP. He's a member of the Chinese Communist Party. Excuse me. So in 2016, he was elected at the General Assembly at the Interpol as the president of the Interpol. And his term supposed to end on 2020 November. However, his term ended earlier in 2018. The reason why his term is ended early is because he suddenly disappeared in China. So I will get to in the next slides, but let's finish this slide here in number 9. So slide number 9 saying that Interpol's headquarters is in Lyon, France. Okay, so Wang Jian's death site it was in province Bonux. I'm not sure I say that right because it's French. Anyway, it's on the picture on the right-hand side at the bottom. The city is called Bonnieux. That's the death place of Wang Jian. So you can see from Lyon, the headquarters of Interpol, if you're driving, so according to Google Map, it's about 3 hours, 2 hours, 85 minutes. Okay, so it's quite close. And Interpol says on its website, it helps global police forces cooperate on investigations. So in Wang Jian's death, it makes sense, right? It makes sense to have Interpol get involved because, Wang Jian is a chairman of a Chinese conglomerate whose reach is, across 5 continents basically, and who is also a green card holder and families live in Seattle. So and also died in France. So it kind of makes sense to have Interpol kind of assigned on this case. Right? Everything looks good. So Meng worked on the death investigation of Wang Jian at the command of the CCP. So CCP, of course, are interested party, right? They have the reason, as I mentioned, why Wang Jian had to die. They are the most interested party to making sure that the case truth never made it to public. That is why they sent Meng Hongwei to this case. And during the investigation, later on shared by Miles, which we will share with you in our next episode, Meng changed and falsified witnesses' testimonies. Okay, a lot of those witnesses, it was basically CCP's special agents anyway, because when Wang Jian died, there are 4 people actually around him. We were talking about who are those 4. And the very first testimony given by those 4 people are different than the second time, their second testimonies. The first testimonies has already been fake. It's already fake, but the second time even worse. And this is basically Meng's masterpiece. But anyway, So, but Meng didn't, end well. So let's take a look at the next slides. So Meng is a Interpol president. You were thinking like he is a very powerful and influential person. He's definitely not insignificant, right? But same thing happened to him. The Chinese head of Interpol has disappeared in China. That was a report, broken out by Washington Post on October 5th, 2018. At that day, there are numerous reports on the same disappearance about Meng Hongwei in multiple news outlets. You can just search it. You can read yourself. So why he's disappearing in China, you would ask, right? Okay, so then the second piece of information I find by Express UK. It's another news outlet. It says international police boss feared kidnapped by China as frantic manhunt begins. Okay, so the timing is very interesting if you notice, because Wang Jian died July 3rd, 2018. And less than 24 hours, the Chinese government has sent 5 special personnel to France, to province, to join the investigation. And on top of that, they also, I don't know when exactly they sent Meng Hongwei, the Interpol, to the province. I don't know when, because Miles did mention, but somewhere between there, I would think after they sent 5 people, they would send Meng Hongwei as well. And Meng Hongwei also worked on the case. But then Meng Hongwei left France on September 20th, 2018. Okay, so September 20th, 2018, which it's about 2.5 months later, he left France to go back to China. And then his wife, Gao Ge, Grace Gao, never heard him again, ever, after September 20th. Okay, the only time they heard he was Meng Hongwei was trying to reach his wife by phone, but he couldn't talk. And then he just sent a emoji, which is not emoji, it just sent a picture, which is a knife, to his wife, signaling that he's in danger, and that's it. Then the husband and wife never talked. Okay, and even to today, they've never talked. So the Chinese heard of Interpol has disappeared in China and then kidnapped. And then the Guardian, October 7th, had this news posted. Missing Interpol chief resigns as it emerges when he is being held in China. Okay, he resigned on October 7th. So what happened is on October 6th, the Interpol actually sent an official inquiry to the Chinese government, inquiry about the president of Interpol. What happened to, my officer, my leader of this organization? Like last time I knew it, like he went to China, and then I never heard from him. So what happened? So it's official inquiry sent by Interpol to the CCP government, and then this happened the next day, which is October 7th. The Interpol chief, which is Meng Hongwei, resigned right after the Chinese government announcing that they will detain Meng Hongwei for bribing charges. Okay, so that's happened on October 7th. And then October 11th, there is an article published on the Atlantic. And on the Google search, it's showing the China's chilling abduction of Interpol's Meng Hongwei. Okay, so that's October 11th. So there's a lot of other similar report on the internet. You just have to look and search by yourself. So it's kind of very strange because Meng Hongwei is the Interpol head, right? So he is the one that has been helping the CCP sending the red notice. If you recall in our previous show, we mentioned in 2017, April 19th, the foreign minister of CCP, foreign minister of the PRC, the China, has announced that the Interpol has issued a red notice on Miles Guo for alleged, crimes. We're not going to go through it because we already said that in previous shows. And that was issued by Meng Hongwei, okay, the Interpol, right? So so now Meng Hongwei, there's no red notice involved, but he just suddenly disappeared. Okay, and this tactics is so common, and it's even being used on the head of the Interpol, who used to use them against other people, right? So this is quite ironic. So I think this is karma. The karma comes really fast. And Wang Hongwei only became the head of Interpol in 2016, but in 2018, he was, disappeared by the CCP pretty much with no explanation to the outside world. And then the only thing we know of is he sent a resignation letter to Interpol. That's it. That was 17 days after he has gone missing. So, and the abduction, as we introduced in our previous shows, like in the previous episode, we know that abduction is really a common way of CCP's, part of their law enforcement. As we mentioned, there's two key witnesses in Miles Guo's case against the PAX, right? They're gone missing. Qu Guojiao is one of them, and the other one is Fiona Yu, and none of them, we don't know their whereabouts of these two ladies even today. These are people vanished. And Qu Guojiao managed to surface later on through a confessed video, right? We will play that video for you on our showing our previous show. But these two ladies are key witnesses in Miles Guo's case, in the PAX case against Miles, but they're gone. And then in our previous show, we also mentioned about the Causeway Bay, the 5 booksellers. They're gone. One of the person involved in the Cosmo Bay bookseller's name is Gui Minghai. He was a Sweden citizen, and although he's a Chinese descendant, and he was actually abducted in Thailand by the CCP secret police. Okay, and then it disappeared. So here, CCP used the same tactics on the Interpol head. I just felt like it's so ironic, who this guy has been issuing red notice to Miles Guo. And so in here, I wanted to just bring you a quite scary news that I've learned just maybe this 2 weeks. And I have to specifically thanks to the nonprofit organization called Safeguard Defenders. And if we can turn into the slides number 11, because I do wanted to let people know, because I noticed on a lot of Twitter posts, the Safeguard Defenders post their Twitter, saying this is happening, but a lot of foreigners, like people maybe living in a free democratic society, their response is like, really? Is this real? Is this really happening in Canada? Or is this really happening in US? I've never heard of it. How could this possible? Their reaction is, oh, how did this possible? But this has been existing for years and years, if not decades. So that's why I want to spend a little bit of time about this abduction, about this involuntary returns that the Safeguard Defenders has been studying on. And there are some numbers and figures here, and it's kind of a really scary. And I wanted to make sure our audience pay some attention to these figures and information they shared, because this is a threat not only just to Chinese, but this is a threat to every people on planet Earth. So that's why I wanted just to put this information in this episode particularly. So I'm gonna spend maybe 15 minutes on just give you some information, 10 or 15 minutes. So here, this report, it was produced in September 2020. So it's very, very new, but the data they studied is actually starting from 2014, where, I'm not sure whether our audience has heard of these 2 campaigns that launched by the CCP. It's called Sky Night and Fox Hunt. If you Google it, Skynet and Fox Hunt, you will find tons of information about them. These are the CCP's basically their covert operation to force suspected criminals, put a quote on them, suspected criminals overseas back to China. So just like they trying to repatriate Miles Guo back to China, the same thing happened to 23,000 Chinese. Okay, so the number is staggering, is really, really appalling, and this is still happening. So I want to show you this one. What does it mean involuntary returns, and what are some of the common tactics that the CCP is using to involuntary returns? Although Meng Hongwei, the CCP lied to Meng Hongwei, summoned him back to China, and as soon as his flight landed in China, they basically detained him. Okay, so I would say it's involuntarily returned, because if Meng would know that he would be detained by the Chinese government right after, his landing, he probably would not choose to go back to China. Okay, so that's why I say Meng Hongwei was trapped, was using deception, and I would say he would definitely be in involuntary returns, because later on I will show you a video that was an interview his wife did with the American press. So later on we will Associated Press, AP. So let's take a look at the definition of involuntary return. Say the use of non-traditional, often illegal, means of forcing someone to return to China against their will, most often to face certain imprisonment, methods ranging from threatening family back in China, sending agents to target in host countries, to direct kidnappings, and which is exactly what happened to the two witnesses in Miles' case, to Meng Hongwei. They're disappearing them, their abduction and kidnapping. So the research, this report on the left of the picture you see, the research behind the report includes a deep dive into 62 cases of both failed and successful attempts at these voluntary returns. So they summarize the three methods of how the CCP, using this involuntary returns to return those people. The type 1 is the threats to the relatives in China. So the harassing, the threat, those people's, those targets, relatives in China, and ask those relatives, their loved ones, to send a message, to call the people who living abroad and ask them to come back. And these are just, these are just beginning. And when they progressing, when they using more coercive ways, then they were threatening to put their relatives, their loved ones, into jail. Okay, using or black jail or detention, or beat them or torture them. So these are on the extreme end of the type 1. But anyway, it's a threat to the relatives in China. And the type 2 is the agent intimidation abroad. So they were sent their secret police. The CCP were sent their secret police to the country, to the foreign country, and then actually threatening, intimidating those person they wanted to come back home face to face. Okay, so this is a type 2. The third is a kidnapping. So they use a kidnapping ways to disappear people in all those countries. And let's take a look, the next slides, slides 12. So this is really, really appalling, because CCP is legalized the kidnapping in Chinese law. Okay, so they have written a law and say they can legally using kidnapping abroad to bring back those so-called fugitives or suspected criminals, just like they call Miles Guo as suspected criminals. And if you look at the Safeguard Defender's previous report, a lot of those peoples are not fugitives. They are just purely political dissidents or opponents, or people wronged those kleptocrats in the past. They just wanted to personal vendetta and revenge. So China legalized use of kidnapping abroad. They're created a new body, it's called Chinese New Theater Super Ministry. It's called National Supervision Commission, and it created in March 2018. Okay, after Xi Jinping eliminated the term, the same year that Xi Jinping eliminated the term limits of being the general secretary of the party and the president of the PRC. So on the basis of Article 52 of the National Supervision Law, signed into law in 2018, it has this language at the bottom, okay, where I put in a big box there. That's scary. There are two common ways. It says we were using these measures to bring people back. These are two common ways. One is kidnapping, which means using the methods of kidnapping to arrest fugitives back to the country. Second is trapping and capturing, which means luring criminal suspects to the territories of the destination country, the high seas, the international airspace, or a third country which has an extradition treaty with the destination country, and then to arrest or extradite them. Okay, that's exactly the second method was used against Meng Hongwei. So Meng Hongwei was lured back to China and then got abducted and then got disappeared. Okay, and this has been written into a law. It's called China's National Supervision Law, Article 52. Can you imagine? So let's take a look at next slides, number 13. So we've talked about CCDI quite a bit, right? Remember, Wang Qishan is the head of CCDI, was the head of CCDI up to 2018, and then 2018, the 19th National Congress, she, consolidated his power, and he started appointing new people. His loyalties, the person that he can trust to take this most important job in the CCP within the party, the CCDI, which stands for the Central Committee for Discipline and Inspection. Okay, so what's the difference between CCDI and the National Supervision Committee that we just introduced in the last episode? In the last slide. Here it is. So the CCDI, CCP member. So if you are a Chinese Communist Party member, just like Meng Hongwei, then you are subjects to an internal party-run police force called the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection before the regular judicial system for suspected criminal behavior. So this system in Chinese we always refer to 双规. So 双 means double, 规 means rules, so double rules. So if you are a CCP member, you're subject to both the party-run, internal party-run, the CCDI, and also the judicial system. But we all know the regular judicial system is just for show. It's just for putting on a show for the people, for the deplorables. Really, it means nothing. The people really fear is the first part, is the CCDI. The CCDI keep party members suspect in incommunicado detention, where they were tortured until they confessed. So that's why Meng's wife never talked to Meng Hongwei. She never know where he is, and Meng Hongwei would never have access to a lawyer. That was a joke. How could you access to a lawyer? You're just facing 24/7 non-stop torture until you confess. That's a living hell. And that's why the CCDI is the most feared by the people. You just disappear, and whether you're alive or you're dead, nobody knows. Nobody confirm it. Nobody's seen you. You're kind of gone. And Meng Hongwei is ahead of Interpol. If CCP can doing this, I don't know, openly and brazenly to a head of Interpol, who else can spared? Who else can be spared? No one. So the National Supervision Committee. In March 2018, the National Supervision Commission was launched. The NSC is an expanded version of the CCDI, and its creation is one of the single greatest strikes against the rule of law in China. We don't have a rule of law to start in the first place because the regular judicial system is completely corrupted and controlled by the CCP mafia. Like they're worse than mafia. They're a crime syndicate. We don't have that. They can do this to anyone they don't like. And this is even worse because partially I think it's because Wang Qishan has been running the CCDI for a while. So Wang Qishan's loyalties throughout the CCDI. So when she comes in, she doesn't feel safe because if this is the most important organ of the CCP, how they use intimidation and terror to rule, then she needs to pick something else. Needs to not only to put someone he can trust as a head of CCDI, but he wants to double ensure it will guarantee his interest. So he needs to establish something else because there's too many Wang Qishan's loyalty left in the system, so he has to making sure that he has a countermeasure in place to double secure his interest. And so that's why I think he established NCS. So designated as a state body. So here again, NCS is not a judicial body. It's a state body. And not a party, not a CCP party body, but on top of it, the NCS is able to wield power over non-party members, okay, and is leading the growing reach of China's policing overseas. So this are from the report that put together by the Safeguarded Defender, which is a non-NGO, non-government organization. And they mentioned about the expansion of the reach of the China's policing overseas, and which we will see later on. And these expanded powers are written into Chinese law. That's the scary part, because it's Chinese law. So now they are whitewashed, so they can do the crime basically in the sunlight. Under the sun, basically. They can go to any country and execute and capture those so-called fugitives and bring them home, kidnap them, and disappearing them. Okay, and basically the other countries are looked the other way. This is not new. This has happening for years. But what about American government? What about the Canadian government? What about Australian government? What about all those, sovereign countries? Are they condone? Like, the question I have is, do they absolutely know this is going on, but they turned a blind eye to that. They looked the other way and let the CCP running basically a crime syndicate in their own country, and sometimes they even offer the help the CCP needs. So this is the world that we're living in. So back to the next slide number 14. Meng Hongwei did not end well. Okay, and Meng Hongwei, the former president of Interpol and the former vice minister of Ministry of Public Security, was sentenced to jail for 13.5 years. And that's the picture that's last taken, okay, from Meng, that on the screen, where he was standing in the courtroom, I think, in the bench, and then accompanied by two the CCP police. And I will show you a video right now. I think it's time for us to play the video from Meng Hongwei's wife and let her tell you what she thinks about CCP. KK, thank you.
Nice to see you. Very much looking forward to talking to you.
使用技术和网络空间的威胁将会继续。
Why now are you showing your face? And are you worried that given what happened to your husband, that bad things could happen to you too if you show your face?
Because for next week,
KK, we
the
can put
general
that full screen for the video if
assembly
you can.
Will be held. So for me, I think I have the responsibility.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Very much looking forward to talking to you.
"使用技术和网络空间的威胁将会继续的扩大。
Why now are you showing your face? And are you worried that given what happened to your husband, that bad things could happen to you too if you show your face?
Because for next week, the general assembly will be held. So for me, I think I have the responsibility to show my face, to tell the world what happened, what should we do, what should we face the difficulty time. And also, during the past 3 years, I learned just like we know how to living with the COVID, I know how to live with the monster, the authority.
He is going to spend 13 years in prison in China. He'll be 80, 80岁, when he comes out. Do you think you'll ever see him again?
I have no any information from the 2018. So till now, I don't know he's still alive. For today's China, in my eyes, I think they are the monster now because they eat their children.
可是在中国，你有没有家里人，母亲、父亲，跟他们有什么联系没有？
我的父亲呢，在我离开之前的3年，他是得了癌症的。那么当时呢，我倾尽了所有的努力，来延长他的生命。现在我不知道他的情况，也不敢想，所以我觉得，当然这是我们家里极大的悲剧，是让人极其痛苦的。但是我知道，今天中国许许多多的家庭都跟我面临着同样的命运。
Okay, so thank you, KK, for playing that video. So, so this is Meng Hongwei's wife. His wife basically never seen Meng Hongwei again, ever, after September 20th, 2018. And even though the news that breaking out by BBC, as you see on the slide, slide number 14, it's in 2020, January, saying that Meng Hongwei has been sentenced to prison for 13 years. But nobody's seen Meng Hongwei in public eyes. Nobody, his families, his sons, has not been talking to him since 2018. So no one, as the wife confirmed in the video, that she doesn't know whether he is still alive or dead, even though the news is saying that he's in jail. So this is the reality of today's China. I think she used words called monster to describe the authority. I think the authority, she meant the CCP authorities, these kleptocrats, or maybe even the system. And the reason why she saying that they're monster, when the reporter asked, the answer she gave is they eat their children. Okay, so I think there's a lot of ways to understand the answer that she gave. But one thing I think we all know, that the biggest victim of this totalitarian regime is its people. It's the Chinese people. We cannot find another organization, a country, a person who have been killed Chinese than the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, if we look just the modern histories, we will know the Chinese people's bodies piled up. And even today, there are still dying every single day. You know, out of the COVID, out of a zero COVID policy, out of lockdown, out of the economic crisis, which, you know, the bank runs, everything, because the money has been already hollowed out from the financial system in China. You know, if you ever invested in emerging markets in China, in Far East, I mean, I'm worried because your investment might be gone. And as economic bubble, as the intro video mentioned by Bannon, you know, the reckless behavior of the CCP kleptocrats in the last couple decades has wounded the world, not only the Chinese people, but the world. Okay, your financial health, your retirement savings, your stability, your freedom, your peace has been destroyed by a number of kleptocrats, by a number of oligarchs, like Wang Qishan, like Xi Jinping. So this is a reality. And I mean, I don't want to spend too much time about discussing her comments, but I just wanted to let you know, no one is spared, not even the president of Interpol. So let's go to the number 15 and 16. I'm just going to quickly mentioning this because I think this is really important. If you're watching this show, I wanted to raise awareness of this in the West, in the democratic country, because we stand chance to fight. When the U.S. is still there, when you still have you still have democracy, you still have a Bill of Rights, a declaration, independence declaration. I think U.S. is still there. We're still in the fight with the CCP. but I wanted people to spread this news because the Twitter answers that I see after the Safeguard Defenders posts, I was truly worried, because I think when people are not knowing the truth, then they don't know who are their enemies. They don't know how to protect themselves, how to protect their families. So that's why I want to spend just a few minutes quickly go through this with you. This is also coming from the Safeguard Defenders report, and this is even more worrying is because the number. So I'm going to show you the number is right here. So 15, slide 15. Okay, so this is the top 100 list. Coming from the top 100 list study that the Safeguard Defender has analyzed. So among this top 100 list was a specific campaign that listed publicly 100 fugitives the CCP police, the Chinese police, were seeking internationally via Interpol Red Notice. Okay, here we go. So Meng Hongwei has helped the CCP issued so many Red Notice against those so-called fugitives. Among them, majority of them, at least half of them is dissidents, politically dissidents, like Miles Guo. So if you look at the pie charts, it's scary. The reason why is, if you particularly look at the methods of return, more than half, okay, I would say half is involuntary return, okay, and the other majority, thank God, is not returned. So CCP's attempts have failed. Right? But there are successfully repatriated people. There are captured in China. There are people died. And then the majority of them are involuntary returns, which means they might be kidnapped, their families being harassed, they themselves being harassed and coerced to go back to China. Okay. And then the scary part is target location. Look at those target locations. We're not talking about the third world. We're not talking about the developing poor countries like Africa, where the human rights kind of discounted. We're talking about those developed countries like United States, like Canada, like New Zealand, like Australia, like similar countries. Okay, and these are the targeted locations. That means in those countries, there are people are helping CCP to kidnap people, to harass their own residents. So this is a striking reality that's happening, and why they're doing that. If you are truly a rule of law based society, why do you help those terrorism to do those things in your own country? That's a big question, and I want to raise awareness for you, so you will dig more, you will ask the question. And alleged crime, of course, as you know, that's the CCP is using their corrupted judicial system to make some crimes, to make you a suspected criminal, and accusing you of committing fraud, contract fraud, etc. And like Meng Hongwei's case, corruption, bribery, and in Miles's case, the same thing: the fraud, corruption, bribery, and rapist, whatever you name it. They're very imaginative and creative. And returns from where? The same thing happened. If you look at it, half of the people that involuntarily returned are from North America. So what do we have been doing? North America, United States, and Canada. What you are doing? What are these governments are helping? And who they're helping? And United Kingdom, Oceania, that which New Zealand and Australia, other Asia countries, Latin America, Africa, Hong Kong, Macau. Hong Kong, Macau is CCP. They can do everything there, right now. So this is crazy. And most those people were returned via involuntary returns and not via Interpol channels and extraditions. Okay, so if you think that Interpol had Meng Hongwei disappeared by the CCP, and the CCP actually punished him using the CCP internal rules, secret police they reserved for all the CCP members. But what does that mean? That action is basically assault. It's open assault on the international community, which is based on rule and law, right? Because head of Interpol, if he has indeed, as the CCP said, he has taken bribery, then there is a process, there are procedures. He is the head of Interpol. You would follow those process and procedures, but no. What the process? What the procedures? In CCP's eyes, there's nothing. There is such contempt. This is a completely act of contempt of the rule of law that the Western society holds together. But they completely ignored it, and their arrogance it's appalling that the CCP actually just abducted Meng Hongwei and detained him and tortured him, and then a year and a half later and sentenced him for 13 years. And his family has never seen him ever since after his disappearance. And that is happening. That's happening today. It's happening in 2018 and still happening today. So this is the next slide, slide 16. So on the slide, this is what the Chinese CCP's attitude. This is a direct quote that was included in the report that I mentioned by the Safeguard Defenders. So one of the Shanghai police officer called Li Gongqing, this is what he said. A fugitive is like a kite. Even though he is aboard, the string is held in China. He can always be found through his family. I don't know what to say. I'm speechless. And the second, by the former Operation Fox Hunt director Liu Dong, also China Secret Police, our principle is thus. Okay, they even have a principle. Whether or not there is an agreement in place, or as long as there is information that there is a criminal suspect, we will chase them over there. We will take our work to them anywhere. I don't know. I don't know what the American government would say to that. I don't know what the Canadian government would say, Australia government might say. And in the other report on the right-hand side, this is another report that published by the Safeguard Defenders in 2021. It was a particular analysis on the misuse and abuse of the Interpol, using misuse of Interpol's red notice by the CCP, by the Chinese government. It's called No Room to Run. I think it's a terror. It's injection, a sense of terror to every Chinese citizen on the planet Earth. No matter where you are hiding, you are living, you cannot outrun the Chinese Communist Party. I think that message is loud and clear through these two policemen. But that's, I don't know what to say. I want to go to directly to another report on slides 20. If we can directly flip to slides 20. This is a very recent report, and if you have not watched this report, I recommend you to go to read it. And I even included the barcode there. I have to thank the Safeguard Defender, because this, what we have been saying in the whistleblower movement, what we have been whistleblowing, telling people that CCP is not a legitimate government. They are a transnational crime organization. They are a crime syndicate, from the individual kleptocrats that's stealing the money from the people and hiding it in the West, to those establishment of the Chinese transnational policing in more than 55 countries. These are purely act of terrorists. Okay, so this is a map. It tells you where the CCP's has been established its police services center in foreign countries. Very appalling. In the United States, there is one in New York City. In Toronto, there is 3 offices established in Toronto, in Canada. And these are just the other countries, you name it, all the countries you can think of. There are the number behind the countries, before the country was the number of offices they have. For example, UK, London, they have 2 offices. So this is a global map that through their research they have found and they've published on their website. So if you are watching this show, go search it. Go telling people that this is really happening. And through this 110 number is the Chinese 911 number. Like, we know if we have emergency, you want to call police, you call 911 in the United States, in Canada. But in China, the 110 is the 911 in here. But they are outreaching to 45 to 54 countries. So in this country, you dial this number, you speed dial to the Chinese Overseas Police Service Station. And they are basically the networks that CCP has sold, in various countries. To do what? To do damages to your democracy and freedom. Because a lot of them are not just satisfying with servicing the Chinese in the local community. They are actually doing a lot of damages. For example, they are affecting your election. Election should be away, should be independent, should be away from influence from any other countries, but they are, the CCP on the grounds and affecting that. So I think the local government and people should be alarmed, and you should look into this, and you should say no to this police service centers, especially those politicians. If you see this is happening, this is not a coincidence. It has been happening for years. It's just the CCP gets more brazen, basically, more bold in terms of their action. Okay, come back to the slides number 21 because we're going to ending the slides. So slides 21, I just want to summarize again why Wang Jian has to die. Okay, so he has to die for 3 reasons. One is for personal reasons, to keep the kleptocrats safe, to keep their crime and wealth hidden. The second reason is to help the CCP achieving its 2049 marathon goal, 100 years marathon, which is replacing United States as the superpower, the only superpower. That they launched the unrestricted warfare, in regards to in regards to 6 fronts that outlined by the General Spalding's book, but I should say it's more than 6. It's basically everywhere. Everywhere you turn, diplomatically, judicial systems, they all have hidden CCP's assets. So this is why Wang Jian had to die, because Wang Jian's HNA is an intelligence platform. Okay, they have lots of people's names, they have lots of contacts, and this is the CCP ways of destroying the United States, as previously whistleblowed by the Mile School, the 3F plan, which is weaken, foment chaos, foment weakness, foment a destruction of the United States. And the last reason he has to die is because the CCP needs a scapegoat for those lost money that borrowed by those kleptocrats. They need to written off, the debts has to be written off as a bad debt. So they need to keep lying to their people so they can maintain their legitimacy. So for those 3 reasons, Wang Jian had to die. So that's basically wrapping up today's show, and I won't leave to the last slides, which is slides 22. I searched the definition of terrorism. Although I know what's terrorism, but I just wanted to know what the definition says. It says the use of violence or threat of violence, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political goals. That's exactly what has CCP done in this, as I mentioned in this episode. They've done it to Wang Jian. They've done it to Meng Hongwei. They've done it to the other 23,000 fugitives that was involuntarily returned to China, using ways like kidnapping, legalized kidnapping, with the help of the foreign countries. And second is resort to terrorizing methods as a means of coercion, or the state of fear and submission produced by the prevalence of such methods. Remember the kite analogy? It tells every Chinese, regardless where you hide, where you're living right now, how happy you are, but you're just a kite on the thread. And on the other hand, the CCP are holding the thread. So no way to run. So what kind of message was that? Even though you're living in a free and open society, but you can't really participating, because that's just illusion, because the CCP can destroy you, just like you can step on ants. That's easy. So that's a terrorizing message. That's why Chinese people are feared. Even though they're living in an open and democratic society, they're fearful. They're fearful for their life. They're fearful for their friends. They're fearful for their relatives, their loved ones back home. This is reality. And what's terrorism? The act of terrorizing, the state of being terrorized, the mode of government or terror or intimidation. It's a state-sponsored terrorization. It's a state-sponsored terrorism. This is why we say in the whistleblower, in the new federal state of China, the new Chinese are saying that the CCP are the root cause of all disasters. We have to end those by taking down the CCP. So that's it. And that's it for today's show. And in the next show, we will talk about details about Wang Jian's death. And we will go through some witnesses' testimonies and to see what really went on at that time. So thank you for watching, and wishing everyone a great weekend. And this weekend is Canadian Thanksgiving. So thank you for bringing my own school to the world. Thank you for awakening the 1.4 Chinese, telling us the truth. So thank you. See you next time. Bye.
A chilling new report revealing China's tactics to harass political dissidents on foreign soil. Human rights group Safeguard Defenders details the CCP has opened up more than 4 dozen informal police stations, often run from Chinese restaurants and convenience stores across Europe and here in the United States. Laura Harth is a campaign director for the group behind the investigation, and she joins us now. Laura, great to have you on the program. This is eye-opening. So Chinese restaurants, quote-unquote, quasi-police stations opened up by the CCP. For what purpose?
Good morning, Will. Thanks for having me. Indeed, as you've said it, what we've seen is that China, obviously we know the PRC has been pursuing this kind of transnational policing activities for quite a while. We had just reported on them in January of this year, the way they're using this kind of illegal instrument, what they call persuade to return methods, to have people return, targets return from across the world. These are massive operations. But what we've come across following a statement in August 2022 from the Ministry of Public Security itself, stating that they had successfully persuaded to return 230,000 targets between April 2021 and July of this year alone under a single campaign. Those numbers were so staggering. So we went to delve in a bit deeper. And what we found is that they've been using these kind of overseas hometown associations, community cooperation centers for Chinese overseas, which on the one hand often do have, let's say, a legitimate purpose in assisting the Chinese overseas communities. But what we found is that something that they're obviously not reporting to local authorities in the countries they're operating is that they're actively using these kind of associations, the people working there, to help in these illegal persuade to return methods, which work through the threats and harassment of family members that are back in China, which may work through direct threats and harassment delivered by the people working for these associations to the target in the country where they find themselves. And so it's quite staggering, because I think we've only begun to see the tip of the iceberg of what is going on. But what is very clear that over the past months, over the past years, the CCP is increasingly pursuing this kind of illegal tactics around the world, making people feel unsafe, making sure dissidents stay silent. And obviously, you know, this is a blatant violation of the territorial sovereignty of other nations.
So quasi-police stations set up, for example, here in the United States, using those locations to take Chinese nationals who speak out in some quote-unquote inappropriate way and persuade or force them to return back to China for punishment.